All right, welcome back. We are going to talk about another unit that was in my Salvage Slam list most recently. And it might not seem like it's that exciting of a unit. It's not that grand. It doesn't have any of the flashy guns and intimidating looks of your standard battle mechs and battle tanks. But I think it's a very worthwhile unit to consider. And I think that when used right can be really beneficial to augmenting the tools in your list, whether running a straight 200 or 250 list for a fixed tournament, or you're running a 350 where you can drop stuff in and out. Because it's cheap, being able to drop it in and out for lists really helps you kind of shore up those points in the end. And that unit is the Armored Personnel Carrier Hover MG variant. All right, so this unit is 11 points. It is size 1, TMM4, move 20 hover. It is a 1-0-0. Count that again, 1-0-0 attack profile. 1 armor, 1 structure. It also has elementary engines, searchlight, who cares, but more importantly, it's turret 1 dash dash dash. So it does get 360 field of fire, which we like. Now, this thing's pretty weak, right? It's only got the 2 hit points, but because it's TMM4 and its speed of 20, you should really be able to avoid being shot or picking and choosing when you use this thing, potentially throw it away, avoid getting shot, whatever. The pros of this is that it is very fast at that 20, although it's not as fast as some other stuff. There are some really light hovercraft out there that are move 26, which is, notably better, but it is fast. It's got 2 hits, right? So I'm going to call that quasi quit resistance, in that you, with that TMM4 and that high speed, like, you can oftentimes weather around a shooting either because your opponent misses you or because they only do 1 hit, because it's very hard to hit you and still be around. Where if you run in something, say like a skimmer or some of these 1 point unit or 1 HP units, like, you get hit, you're gone. The one shot that you get is really, really great. Because it's at short, which, because you're fast, you should be able to get into a rear, which basically makes it 2 shots. And I always think of this thing as not doing 1 shot at close, as doing 2 shots at close, because I'm going to position this thing to be in my opponent's rear. It's very ubiquitous. Like, everyone can take it. And it's pretty cost effective at 11. A skimmer is 7 points, and it has a 0 star at close, and it only gets 1 HP. So for 4 more hit points, you're a little slower. Instead of 26, you're 20, but you're a little slower, but you're picking up a shot and a point of health. And I think it's a pretty good trade-off for what you're going to use this thing for, which we're going to talk about in a second. Now, the cons to this is it doesn't have something like infantry transport, even though it is an armored personnel carrier. It is fast, but it is not the fastest. It's only 20 instead of 26, which is still plenty of speed. It's just, when you're used to running something 26, it can be really nice. And then you have to move 20. It's not so great sometimes. And then cons also, yes, the pro being at 2 HP, but also con being 2 HP, which means it's very, very squishy. So you have to be really, really tactical with how you move this and how you engage with it. So that gets us to our philosophy and use on how we're going to use this. And that is primary objective grabber, just like you would use a skimmer, right? He's going to be there for the feel bad, I gotcha, you misplayed, you got off an objective and I'm running in there and grabbing it because you didn't leave it covered, right? And so that's what he's going to be there for. And because he's got that 2 HP, he's more likely to weather things than that skimmer would. And because he's 11 points, he's a little cheaper than, say, something like a Savannah Master, which is 15. The other thing is cleanup duty, or my cleanup team. And what I mean by this is how I use them in Salvage Slam and all the games leading up to Salvage Slam, was you get a unit down to like only 1 or 2 HP. You don't want to be taking your big guns from your mechs and your tanks and wasting them on taking this unit out that's only got like 1 or 2 hit points left. And you take your APC HOVER MG and you go over and clean up shop. I had one game, I think it was a test run game, if I remember right. I killed 3 units. Like, I didn't like kill them outright, like in that I did all the damage, but this thing removed like 2 or 3 units from the board because I got down to like only 1 or 2 HP. And then he was able to get in their rear and shoot them up. With that said, because you're only shooting at close range, like, you can like shave a point or even 2 and make this thing skilled down to like skill them, so not skill down, skill them up to like 5, right? And save like a point. And that might be a like really, really important for a 250 list coming out of a 350, or squeezing right under the right, squeezing enough units into your 350 list that have the tools you need to complete all the different missions. This thing's going to do really well at most of the missions where it requires you to grab objectives. Domination, it's going to do very, very well. I wouldn't run him in King of the Hill in all likelihood, because that becomes a mosh pit and it's just too much stuff close in. Hold the line, where you're running across the board and trying to pop those single objectives. He's very good in Headhunter with like snatching the heads, right? Snatching the little objectives that are dropped. And then just being a general menace for 11 points. Like I said, getting in the rear, putting 2 damage on stuff. If you got someone who's running like heavier mechs or medium mechs and they're only 1 or 2 TMM, and this thing's even skill 5, you're hitting on 6s and 7s at close range. You're probably connecting with one of those 2 shots. And if you're skill 4, you're probably connecting with both, right? And so he can be really, 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 really good in that regard. He will struggle against a list that's got some turrets, because those turrets are going to be able to pop him right when he gets behind. So you're going to have to be careful about that. I like to run him real cagey, hide behind hills, behind buildings, hide him, and then pop out an ambush and just add that little cherry on top of whatever the engagement is. It can be really, really, really nice. That turret also makes it nice, because if your opponent tries to counter him with their own hovercraft, at least you can turret and shoot if they get in your rear for whatever reason, which hopefully they do not. So I think he's a pretty good option to consider. I don't want to say he's an auto include in every list, but like if you're trying to find, like, say you're someone who used to run 2 skimmers, right? Now you can't run 2 skimmers because of the rule of 2 affecting vehicles. Like, you could run a skimmer and run this thing, and this thing for 4 more points, it's actually a little bit better, because he gets a shot and he gets that extra point of health. And not that you should, but you can, say this thing takes 1 point of damage at some point. You've done some shooting. He's done his job. He's taken 1 point of damage. If you wanted to, you could suicide cruiser missile this thing into the back of something, and it will be just as effective as a skimmer. Model review. I don't think, if I remember right, there's nothing really out there that you can use from CGL, but Ironwind Metals has got all sorts of vehicles that you could sub in. I think I use like a Blizzard model for mine. You can basically use like whatever little mini hovercraft. They've got lots of little hovercraft options over there in Ironwind Metals. And if you're playing in a format that doesn't require to use official models, there's a bazillion companies that make 6mm, 10mm hovercraft that you could use as one of these things. So lots of options out there. I want to talk about in the notable variants. I'm going to talk about. I'm kind of going to go off script here, not off script, but I'm going to do something a little different, because I'm going to talk about the other armored personnel carrier options. But I'm also going to give you just to compare and contrast this thing with some other notable options that might fill the same role as a fast objective grabber who can also do a little bit of damage. So let's go over the hovercraft first. Most of them I probably would leave at home and not take, to be honest with you. So we're going to start with the sensor variant. It's 10 points. It's move 20. It's 2 HP, and it has no damage. Now, the thing it's going to pick up really on the sensor variant that's going to be relevant for an Alpha Strike game is going to be infantry, transport 1, and energy weapons, which who cares on the energy weapons. And the IT 1, it's going to be really hard in the new format to take stuff that's only cargo capacity 1 for infantry to be able to board stuff. So I don't, if you wanted to use this as like a more bodied skimmer, because it's got that extra HP, I guess. But for 1 point more, you can get the MG version. And I don't know why you wouldn't do that. Plus, this thing is a little slower than a skimmer, right? It's only move 20. So you're exchanging 6 points of movement for 1 additional point of health. Maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's not. I probably wouldn't take it. The just base hover variant is also 10 points. You don't have energy weapons, but you have the IT of 1 and your 0 star. So at least in the rear, you're picking up 1 damage in the rear, but you're only, for 1 more point, you can pick up that MG, and I don't know what you're going to use that IT 1 for anyways. The SRM variant is 11 points. It's 0 star, 0 star with an IT of 1. So for the same amount of points, I think I prefer again the MG variant, just so you have that solid one shot at short, as opposed to a 0-star possible shots at short and medium. And then the last is the LRM variant, which is 0-star, 0-star, 0-star for 12 points. Otherwise, it's all this, these are all the same with the 2 HP, and a IF 0-star, which who cares? You're never going to use them. So I think these other options are all pretty junk unless you're like, I need something to take objectives and I don't want to do much short for whatever reason. I'd probably just avoid them altogether. So I want to talk about your comparison. We talked about the skimmer a little bit. It's 7 points. It's 0-star. So you're not getting that shot. You're losing a point of armor. Really, the trade-off there is extra point versus movement, and then the shot. Extra point of health and the shot or 6 more move. It's really tactically, what are you wanting to use these units for, these fast units for? If you want something that can do a little cleanup duty and do a little damage, I think that armored personnel carrier beats the skimmer all day. When you look at the Savannah Master options, there's one that's really good, and that's the small laser version. That is like the most comparable. It's 12 points instead of 11. It also moves 26, and it otherwise is got the 4 TMM. It's got 2 health. It's got 1-0-0, and it's got energy weapon. So it's like just better. For 1 more point, you get 6 more movement and you get energy. The problem is it's super, super limited. I think it's only Larens in like Star League or Early Succession Wars or something like that. So then you're looking at the other Savannah Masters. So the two that are most notable are going to be the Reflective Armor and the base Savannah Master, which are 15 points. So you're spending an extra 4 points, but you're getting 1-1-0, and you're getting 6 more inches of movement at 26. So these can be options to fulfill that role. I think you're spending, when you're really spending these points on these units, I'm always trying to be really point efficient, right? And what I like about the armored personnel carrier is I shave 4 points off of the Savannah Master. That Savannah Master very, very rarely is probably engaging your opponent at medium range. They're most likely engaging your opponent at short range most of the time, or they're grabbing objectives. And so I'm of the opinion that if you're trying to squeeze efficiency out of the last 21 points of your 250 or your 350 list, this is going with the armored personnel carrier MG variant is like a super good option, right? Because you're maybe you can use those 4 points somewhere else, maybe in a better piece of battle armor or another vehicle that's better, right? I mean, think of it this way: you can run 2 Savannah Masters if there was no rule of 2, right? You can run 2 of Savannah Masters for 30 points, and then or you could run 3 of the Hover MGs for 33 points. Like, I think I'd rather have the 3 Hover MGs, to be honest with you, over the Savannah Masters. But it is an option there. Now you have the Interdictor Savannah Master, which is 11 points, but you don't get a shot. And it's 26, but it does have the 26 move. It's also got ECM. So maybe that's an option if you want to do ECM, but what we're really focusing on here is something that grab objectives and also be on that cleanup crew, and the Interdictor is not going to allow you to do that. The other one that I looked at for this video was the Multi-Air Hover APC with Fusion. The problem with this is it's just as fast, so it's only move 20 as that MG. It's 1-1-0. It's IT4, which is nice. And it's got 3 hit points, 2 armor, 1 structure. Now, I'm not going to run this multi-tier. I think multi-tiers are great. This one in particular, because of its speed, is great. I'm not going to run this thing and use it in the same capacity as the APC with the MG. And the reason is that this thing really, the multi-tier really is there to YOLO some infantry into the fight, grab objectives, and do the cleanup crew. So it's even more, got more tools, but it's almost doubled, not totally almost double, but it's 7 more points. So you're spending a lot more points and you're not getting that efficiency. So in your bag of tricks, when you're building your list, you got to kind of identify these cheap units that can plug into your list, into your 350, and go here and there, and kind of give you tools that maybe the rest of your list doesn't have. So let's say you're running a list that is on the slower side. Maybe it's maybe you're running a bunch of those Speed 10 TMM2 heavy mechs that I like. Well, that speed of 10 is great, but you lack some of that gotcha speed. right? And so you get to the end of building your list, maybe you got 4 or 5 solid like speed 10 units in there that are dishing out a good amount of damage, but you get to the end of your list and you really don't have something that can just be like, get you, right? Whether that's something that can act as a rapid response or take advantage of a tactical situation, your opponent leaves an objective open, or like I said with this, act in a cleanup crew. And so these are things you want to think about finding and identifying those units. For a long time, we've used skimmers, but the skimmers can't shoot, right? And so the only way to offensively attack someone is through a suicide mission, which then you lose your skimmer. Yes, you can do a lot of damage, but you lose your skimmer. This armored personnel carrier maintains that high TMM of 4 with its speed. It has really good speed at 26 or 20 instead of 26, but it can also act on cleanup crew, right? And because it's cheaper, it can also act as a quasi initiative sync, right? And so that can be super helpful also. So this thing seems unassuming, but has actually a lot of tactical flexibility running in the battlefield with this little machine gun, doing a point here, 2 points there, but then also grabbing objectives. So think about those things when you're building your list. How can this seemingly worthless unit, how can it actually fit into my list and do a good job? And I think these armored personnel carriers with the MG variant, the hover ones, like fulfill that role very, very well and have a place in probably more lists than you think to give yourself some of those tools and then take up those last 20 points, right? But then giving you this tactical flexibility that you might not otherwise get from another unit that is in the same point range that might be slower, like say like a scorpion tank, right? Or a goblin, which I see people run, right? And they're like, oh, I'm going to run this thing because it does some damage. It's got some armor. Well, it's like, well, but those are fine, I guess, but they die very fast because they're low HP, even though they got more than this. They're low TMM though, and they really don't put out that much more damage than this thing is capable of. So think about that when you're doing your list. Let me know in the comments below what you think, and if you've run these before, like, subscribe, yada yada. May the blessings of Blake be upon you.